KT on the Twitter. What's happening?
Hey, how you guys doing today? I'm feeling fantastic, man. I'm ready to talk some wide receivers with the one and only Mr. Sikkema. Let's get it.
Man, I realized I made a mistake. It's the governor.
It's all good, player. They didn't know we Gucci. We good.
Yeah. Man, I've never been on the campaign trail before, so usually I'm like 165 episodes in on my other show, and we don't have anybody running for election. So this is my fourth time, and I'm trying to put in my best case to get you voted for, and I dropped the ball.
Last year was self-proclaimed. This year I want the community to vote.
Yeah, you got to get those. You got to get those banners that you put in people's yards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotta get some commercial advertisement money in too. Trash a couple people.
Yeah. You got to grease some pockets. That's the way it works. All right, we've left the guests waiting long enough. It's Trevor Sikkema. It's at Tampa Bay Trey on the Twitter from the NFL Stock Exchange. UF alum. How we doing?
Dude, can I be like a cabinet member of college football then? Like, can that be?
Yeah.
Can that be my title? I don't really care when it goes. I can't be above you guys. I'm not going to be above you guys. So like, can I just be like a state representative of college football or something like that?
City council, whatever you want. We got.
There you go. I don't even manager of volunteers. I don't care. But yeah, it's great to be with you guys. So I appreciate you having me on.
These guys may be looking for a campaign manager, so
great, wonderful. That's me.
Sure.
That spot is now available. I've already seen it come up. All right, hey, you are a UF alum, and this is a wide receiver episode. But I already saw the trash talk going on in the chat, so we need to get this out of the way. Where do we stand on AR-15? Where do we stand?
Dude, I like him a lot. I really do. Now, does he have a ways to go with consistency? He does. But the way that I've kind of said my analysis of him throughout draft season is you look at what he is as a high ceiling prospect. And honestly, I think a lot of people are going to hear the way we talk about Anthony Richardson, and they're going to say, okay, well, what's the difference between him and Malik Willis, right? Big arm. He's got a dual threat ability. It was a lot of kind of like, all right, he's not there yet, but he could be there. Look how good he could be. And people are going to say, Malik Willis was a third-round pick. So why are we talking about Anthony Richardson as a top 15 pick? And the way that I explain those two things, because I think it's a logical conclusion that people come to, with Malik, as much as I liked Malik, and I did like Malik a decent amount, it was if the footwork gets better, if the throwing motion improves, if the ball placement, if the accuracy, if how he reads the field, if how he doesn't bail from clean pockets, manages the pocket, manages pressure, if all of these things get better, he has the talent to be a fantastic quarterback at the NFL level. For Richardson, it's a lot of those same things, but he's already done them. He just doesn't do them consistently. There are times when you watch Richardson tape and he will look super comfortable in the pocket. He will stay between the tackles. He will move slightly to avoid pressure, and he can put a ball exactly where it needs to, where the wide receiver can only get it. Like, I've seen that so many times, and I don't mean to totally insult Malik's time at Liberty. There were certainly times when he put it all together. That's why we loved a lot of the tape. But for Richardson, I would just say it's more consistent than people are giving him credit for. Like, a lot of that is already there with his baseline and how good he is. You just certainly need the accuracy to improve, right? Low 60% adjusted completion percentage. That's not where you want to be. You got to be in the 70s. It's got to be more consistent. It's got to be those kinds of things. Decision making, where he's looking with his eyes, all of that. I think those things need to improve. But he was only a one-year starter. Like, I think people got to remember that as well. So at the end of the day, I think that he had a lot of in-the-know people telling him what the NFL draft kind of thought of him before he declared. And I don't think he declares if he wasn't being told that he's going to be a first-round pick. So I do think when it's all said and done, he's going to be a first-round pick.
Nino, what do you think? What do you think of all that?
Listen, I agree with what Trevor said about his camp telling him that why would he go out if he wasn't going to be first round?
Right.
I just don't believe what you have with Jared, Coach, that he's going top 16. I think he's going to be the latter end of the first round for the fifth-year option lockup.
Okay. But Jared doesn't even think he's going in the first round.
Jared
doesn't think
he's got to go in the first round.
We had. Don't shake your head, Nino. No. Joe knows. took AR-15, picked 22 in a mock draft we did, and y'all blasted him. Blasted him.
That's too early.
But it's going to happen. It's not about what you think about him. It's what NFL teams think about him. That's how it works. That's how it works. An NFL organization, if they see a player do something enough, they are arrogant enough to they're in that position. They had to get in that position somewhere, somehow. They're arrogant enough to believe I can get it out of him consistently. That's how it works.
Okay, that's fine. But what we've seen, KT, right? You got my back on this. What we've seen.
Oh, you know I'm going to have your back 100%. I got you.
All right. What we've seen on paper, it's a quarterback position, right? The first thing you're supposed to do is throw the ball.
How is Jalen Hurts? How is Jalen Hurts?
Whoa. Hey, he had 3 games over 200 yards this year.
Jalen Hurts.
3.
But I'm just saying.
3.
But he's taking his team to the Super Bowl.
No, I'm talking about AR.
Are we talking about Jalen Hurts prior to his arrival in Norman?
Yeah.
Thank you.
With Jalen Hurts with Alabama. AR-15 started for 1 season. Jalen Hurts missed wide receivers. They were wide open. Like that championship game for Alabama, there were wide receivers running open all over the field. And he wasn't just missing them by this much. Dude's missing them by yards, like 6-7 yards. Terrible.
Okay, right. But KT's point, he went to Norman. It got developed. Okay, maybe AR needs a development. But the hype, the kid's got athleticism through the roof. All of a sudden, they beat Utah, and he made 1 jump pass that everybody talked about, right? And it went through the roof. But like, the athleticism was never questioned. I need to see him throw the ball, man.
To piggyback on what Nino is saying, I think that's just a sign of the times. You know, the sign that we are in 2023. I can't name another class, maybe other than 2013, where this guy is even considered a top 2nd or 3rd round pick. But because of what, Justin Fields was able to do with the Chicago Bears, some of the inconsistencies that he's had, you look at the upside, you look at, hey, if he gets into the right scheme with the right coach, a coach that's going to cut off half of the field, you're going to have to make easy reads. I can see it then. But as far as what we saw, we are going off of a small sample size of times he was able to be accurate, times he was able to get completions versus what we know. What was his completion percentage this year? High 50s?
Yeah, it was definitely in the 50s. And I will say, I think the Justin Fields point is a really great one for this conversation, because people are going to point to Justin Fields both as a strength for Anthony Richardson as an argument, but it's also a negative because Justin Fields was further along as a passer than Anthony Richardson is. And we saw this past year how poorly Justin Fields threw the ball. So I think that just kind of, you got to remember that timing, fit, coaching staff, whether or not they get to sit at all of those things matter into early development for a quarterback. I would love for Anthony Richardson. You know what the perfect spot for Anthony Richardson is? And it has been for a while, but it still is. It's the New York Giants. It's the Giants giving Daniel Jones a 3-year contract. It's probably going to be front-loaded. The first 2 years are going to be guaranteed. The 3rd year, 4th year, if it's a 3 or 4 year deal, probably not going to be a lot of guarantees on it because they want to front-load it because of how well he's playing right now. And in 3 or 4 years, you can get out of it if you want to. If they were able to draft Anthony Richardson at the back end of the first round, he sits behind Daniel Jones. He gets to work with Brian Daboll, and it's just it's a match made in heaven. At that point, I would tell you that he's going to be that. To me is worth a 1st round pick. If he goes to the Titans, I don't mean to pick the team that literally just drafted Malik Willis, but if he goes to the Titans, then you're in a situation where the wide receivers aren't good, the offensive line's getting older and worse. Yeah, you got Derrick Henry with you, but are you throwing AR out there next year if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt or just looks bad again? Because that's terrible. That would be a bad situation. So it all kind of, not to have a cop-out answer, but it does depend on where he lands, as it often does with a lot of these draft prospects.
That's it. Well, I'm glad we got that out of the way. That was something that needed to happen. So we're good.
Got the blood flowing, Yeah. That was good. It was a good debate. Now we're into it.
Yes. All right. So Trevor, talk to us about some wide receivers, man. We're pretty excited about this class. We were down at the Senior Bowl. We got our eyes on some of this young talent, but outside of the Senior Bowl, there's also a lot of underclassmen. This class is led by underclassmen, essentially. So why don't you go through some of your favorite prospects from this year and tell us a little bit about them?
I guess I'll go through, as I'm looking at my list right now, the 6 players that I think could be first rounders. Now, I don't think all 6 of them are, right? This year's class, I will start by saying, is not last year's class. Unfortunately, for a lot of the teams need a wide receiver. Whoever you have wide receiver 1 in this class, it would be hard to have them over, like at wide receiver 3 at the highest from last year's class. You look at what it was with Drake London and Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, like Jahan Dotson, all those guys, man. Just like so many talented wide receivers in last year's class that I think would be wide receiver 1 this year. But that's not to say that these guys aren't great. And because we know that playmaker is becoming such a premium position in the draft, I do think that there are a handful of guys that could be a team's cup of tea, like at the end, back half of the first round, things like that. So Quentin Johnson, I think I'm going to end up with him as my wide receiver 1. He's been wide receiver 1 for a while, although I will go back and watch a little bit more film of these guys after the combine comes out, because I'll get some, everybody will get the athletic testing and the real measurables and all that good stuff. Because, man, measurables matter a lot for this specific class, because a lot of the guys that would even go top 50, they're small. And you got to know, like, how small are they? Like, are they, is it like, oh, they're sub 200 small, or, oh, they're 175 small, because that's a major difference. And I think that we might have that with some of these prospects. Quentin Johnson at least gives you the size and the athleticism. If you want a guy who could play at the sideline, to be able to play an X position, if he feels like the guy that's going to allow you to do it. Smith and Jigba, clearly very, very productive when he was healthy at Ohio State, over 1,600 yards in his sophomore season. Didn't get to play because of injury last year, but he played, but not really, which kind of sucks. But maybe it went into his advantage because of I just will say, like, how weak the class is at the top, so he could potentially be a wide receiver 1. I like Zay Flowers a lot. Zay Flowers, to me, gives you that separation and explosiveness that I feel like a lot of other players don't have. Like, he's got juice, and in a class that maybe has a lot of guys who are either good route runners or just really savvy slot players, to me, Zay Flowers brings you some juice at the wide receiver position that's great. Jordan Addison, former Biletnikoff winner, understands how to run the routes, understands how to win at the position. Again, it's just, I think he's listed at like 6'1", 180.
He's a little fella.
And that's just not big in the NFL. Are you going to get bullied against corners? I'm not sure. Some people think that Josh Downs from UNC can make the back end of the first round, a very shifty, productive slot wide receiver. How much is the NFL really going to value those guys? I'm not sure. Jalen Hyatt, I think, is probably the 5th one. He is the wild card to me. I don't see like first round tape from him, but he brings a straight line, take the top off of defense speed that I don't really think anybody in this class has, especially for his size. So he also reigning Biletnikoff winner. He won it this past year with how productive that he was at Tennessee. If a team's like, no, we need an outside or slot wide receiver who could just get vertical for us, we need a deep threat, maybe you can convince yourself that Jalen Hyatt can be that guy. I think his route tree is kind of limited, but if you want that mold, there's not really another player in this class that you would wait for. So those are the 6 guys, a little bit of a spark notes on them that I think could potentially be first round guys, but at least guys that I think have a shot at the top 50.
Nino, you look to be chomping at the bit. When I see Jalen Hyatt, it reminds me of Will Fuller coming out of Notre Dame a little bit. Go ahead, Nino.
I get it. You're right. The big play guy. But I feel like you said take the top off the ball, right, Trevor?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of the time he took the top off the ball of a broken place. Like he looked like he was fast because nobody was there because the play was broken. I mean, KT talked about it a lot on CF Nation. Like he was the broken play dude, and I think that elevated his stock. I'm not saying that he's a one-trick pony and that's all he can do, but I would like to see more of him in like press coverage beating a guy. You know what I'm saying?
Coach, you brought up Will Fuller. Will Fuller was a much more complete wide receiver coming out of Notre Dame than Jalen Hyatt was. Like he could catch through contact, he could run all kinds of different routes. They would use him over the middle with like in-breaking routes, digs, deep posts, like all that kinds of stuff. For Hyatt, he has had some instances where he's had to get contested catches, but you guys are right. Josh Heupel was in his bag this past year. Like it was unbelievable the way that he was able to scheme things up. Hendon Hooker was incredible for him. The wide receiver group that they had was deeper than even just Jalen Hyatt. And he consistently put Hyatt in these situations where it was almost like, isn't it like Canadian football where you could like take off before the snap?
Yeah.
Yes,
They
CFL.
they would put Jalen Hyatt off the line of scrimmage in the slot to where you could not get hands on him until he was 2 or 3 steps into his acceleration. Well, then his straight line speed is so good.
Right.
That is what is creating a lot of the broken plays. Or he'd be the back man in those stacked alignments that Heupel would love to run to stretch the defense out horizontally. So there's no doubt about it that there are, you if you were to go to YouTube and type in Jalen Hyatt highlights, a lot of it's like, okay, where is the defense? Like, did they have the over in this game? Like, do they just want the points? Like, what's going on? But some of that is scheme related. And I do agree with you, Nino, that is absolutely the case. But his speed also went into how they used him. So that's kind of why I say if a team needs just a deep threat wide receiver, I don't think that's going to be worthy of a first round pick. But maybe a team could be like, hey, can't teach speed. And in this class specifically, there's not a lot of other guys that can do that for you.
As far as Jackson Smith and Jigba, it has to be taken into account that he did what he did alongside Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. The NFL teams that's I know he was hurt this year, and I know we're really going off of film from now 2 seasons ago. But I just look at Ohio State. I look at the wide receiver factory it has become, and if I'm an NFL organization, if I'm drafting a wide receiver this year, based upon how teams have hit wide receivers in the past probably 4 or 5 years, I don't want to look foolish by missing, because so many teams have hit. And if I don't want to miss, I feel like he's the safest pick out of, all the guys you listed.
And there is reason to believe that he will be wide receiver 1 off the board because of that, right? He has 1,600 yards, not just because there's nobody else in the offense. I mean, we're talking about NFL Rookie of the Year contenders Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, who he was playing with, and yet people on the team talked about Smith and Jigba as that next man up, that best guy out of the 3. So I don't know if I fully believe that, but that's just them kind of caping for their guys. Now, I will say this. We're not doubting Jackson Smith and Jigba because of the film. Like, the film is great. When it comes to being a slot receiver, he gets it. He understands how to really attack zone coverage. He understands leverages of corners and linebackers and safeties that are going up against him. He's very shifty. He's very savvy. The only reason why he might not be wide receiver 1 or might not be a first-round pick, which it feels like he's going to be a first-round pick at this point, but the reason why that was doubted during this process is because I don't really know how athletic he is. You talk about scheme with Tennessee. Ryan Day's scheme at Ohio State, especially for the quality of opponents that they play, you got wide receivers just running wide open when you're running deep passes combined with mesh routes underneath. Like, you just got guys that are running for days. So, like, sometimes he's just a product of the system in that regard. And when it comes to him really out-athleting players, there's not a ton of evidence that he's going to be able to do that at the NFL, given what he put out on tape a couple of years ago. And injury aside, it's not like you're just magically going to become a much better athlete when you get to the pros. You'll get stronger. You'll get quicker. Guys can work on those things, but significantly, I'm not sure. So all that to say, Spark Notes version, he is a good wide receiver. Understands the position well. I think he could be a great slot machine for you. But is he going to be that wide receiver 1 type of slot receiver, like a Keenan Allen or something like that? I'm not so sure. I don't know how athletic he is in that point.
Now, you got Quentin Johnson as your 1. But now I'm going to ask you this question. So forget who you think has the highest ceiling, because I don't know. I don't know if your rankings have to do with ceiling or floor, if it has to do with, say, who would you say out of the wide receivers you listed? Like, if you were building a team, regardless of where you're picking in the first round, you looked at this list of wide receivers, which of these wide receivers would you think is safe? Like, I am safe picking this guy. He's going to ball out.
I think there's a lot of slot wide receivers in this class that are safe, like that are going to be able to produce for you at the pro level. Smith and Jigba is one of them. Because we already have the film. Like, I know where he's going to win. His eval is decently easy in that regard. I think Josh Downs is probably the same way. I'm trying to look at. I think that those are probably the same. Zay Flowers too. I'll throw Zay Flowers in there just because I really liked what I had seen from him. He absolutely put on a show in Vegas for the Shrine Bowl. So it feels like it's those 3. I have other wide receivers that I like, but if you talk about highest floor, like guys that we've watched in college football who you go, okay, this is going to be your role, and I already know that you can do it well. Zay Flowers, Smith and Jigba, Josh Downs. It's probably those three.
Go ahead, KT. I see you ready to chime in. Go ahead, my guy.
Jordan Addison, for me, if a safe pick, a slot guy. I think he can produce, and I don't even think, if we're purely talking about floor, I don't even think scheme matters. I think you can plug him in at the slot, no matter what team draft him, and he'll produce.
I like Jordan Addison a good deal, and we're actually putting our early wide receiver rankings out. I think it's sometime next week, so I'm going to go through a lot of these guys again from what I saw at the end of the season and what I saw live. So I might end up falling in love with Addison's floor because he has been incredibly productive over the last couple of years. But the thing that just worries me is he's $180. You know, yeah. he's just small, and there are not many corners that are even that small. And you know, you look at the average wide receiver position, and it's like 6'2". 210, 205, you know, something like that. Maybe it's a little closer to 200, but you look at, I think, corner numbers, it's somewhere around 185, 190, and Addison's just smaller than even average corners in the league. So that's the part that really worries me. His game, I love. He gets it. Clearly, a very, very productive wide receiver, understands the position very well. Even going back to high school, I think that he's understood the position so well. But does that lack of weight show up? You know, for a guy like Devontae Smith, it doesn't, right? I mean, he's still a superstar. So is Jordan Addison going to be maybe not as good as Devontae Smith, but like a Devontae Smith guy who can be an outlier? Maybe. But there's a lot more smaller wide receivers that didn't turn out the way that you would want it to for a big-time investment than the ones who have. And I think that's just part of the evaluation of what you got to think about of how much you believe in him.
Man, with Jordan Addison, it was very fun watching them play Utah. And watching him go up against Clark Phillips, that's another undersized guy. Like you said, size. Like there's a lot of corners that size is like they're falling. Like guys are falling just because they're not meeting that threshold. So the NFL is definitely, you know, if you're not the height requirement, the weight requirement, even if you are talented, you know, it's pushing you down the board. But Nino, it looked like you were ready to chime in, man. So what you got to say?
Yeah. I got a question for Trevor. I know you said Quentin Johnson was your guy, right? Number one, right? Just roundabout where you had him. I know our guy Shane is a big fan of him, and my buddy Matt Cooper, who me and Katie had on CFB Nation. I'm going to throw his point out there because the more and more I watch the film, I'm starting to believe it. He said that he believes that Rashee Rice could be everything that people believe Quentin Johnson is going to be. You know, he's got the size, he's got the hands, the speed. I understand he did it at SMU and not at TCU, you know, the Big 12, but if you dive into Rashee Rice's tape, man, he is an absolute dog, and he has wheels.
The dog mentality, yes, he is. He is definitely a dog. The part that I hate it when schools do this. I get it; it happens all the time. But like, I think SMU had him listed. Let me look actually. Let me see, because I know it's not correct. I know the what they had him listed at was not correct. SMU's website has him at 6'2", 205. He measured into the Senior Bowl at 6 foot flat, 200 pounds. Yeah. So they overinflated the weight a little bit, which is fine. I mean, weight fluctuates for everybody. Shoot, you know, like if I eat a steak tonight, I'll be fat tomorrow, right? So the weight part, I'm not worried about. If we thought you were 6'2", 6'3", and you show up 6 feet tall, that's a little different because specifically of the type of game that he plays. He's a bully out there. In like the best way. Like he is a true X type of wide receiver who knows how to get off the line of scrimmage, is really comfortable at the sideline with not a ton of space to work with, and he loves contested catches. Like he loves catching through traffic. He loves to be that guy to go up and get a jump ball in the air, come down with it, and also let the corner know that he just caught it over him afterwards. So I like Rashee Rice. I really do. Again, this just kind of comes down to he doesn't I'm not so sure he has the speed to play like as a flanker or as a slot. I mean, you could play anybody in the slot these days because offensive coordinators they're so good at what they do. But he plays that X role, right? SMU guys, like he played, it felt like that Cortland Sutton type of role for them in that offense at that school. I know there's been a little bit of change, but just to give people some familiarity of the type of wide receiver we're talking about, Cortland Sutton's big. He's a lot bigger than that. Rashee Rice's game doesn't necessarily match his size when it comes to the transition to the pro level. So still like him. I still like him plenty. There's a place for him in the NFL, and I think he could be a damn good wide receiver. It's just, again, something you got to think about with him being a true X and only being about 6 feet tall.
All right.
You hold on, real quick. You had also mentioned about the size, guys being 170 and everybody being fast. And you mentioned Zay and Josh Downs being those possession guys. I believe all three of us kind of fell in love with a guy at the Senior Bowl. I think you might have as well. He goes by the name of Nathaniel Tank Dell. I know he's 5'8", whatever they said, 163, 170.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he plays bigger than that, and he plays violent for a guy at that size. I know he's not a first-round pick. Where can you see him climbing to with what he's done so far? If he balls out at the combine, because if he runs a 4.32 at the 40, I think he's going to skyrocket.
Tutu Atwell was a second-round pick a couple of years ago, right, from Louisville, and the Rams took him. And I'm not sure that anybody was going to take Tutu Atwell around that range, but Tank Dell is everything you would have wanted Tutu Atwell to be. And so, like, in that realm, I think that Dell is going to be a second-round pick. I really do. I think that he had a good enough Senior Bowl for that to be the case. You mentioned he plays bigger than his size, but most importantly, he plays fast. Like, when you get players, it's kind of the same thing with, like, interior defensive linemen. If you look at interior defensive linemen, Kalijah Cansey's a great example. He lines up at 280, 285. Okay, you understand what his weight is. Now, knowing what his weight is, you have to understand what you want to see. You are smaller, so I need you to be that fast. I need you to be that explosive to where you make up for your lack of size. It's the same thing for Tank Dell. And it's the same thing for like any player, really. When you have a deficiency with your measurables, you need to then take whatever strength you would get from being smaller or bigger, and that needs to shine a lot more for you to make up for it. Dell does. Like, he has the speed that you would want him to have. Most importantly, the quickness. There were a couple of routes, and I'm sure you guys saw it at the Senior Bowl, where he's just absolutely cooking people off the line of scrimmage. Like, they can't get hands on him. There's not even a chance at it. But what I loved most about Tank Dell, we talk about acceleration. We talk about release off the line of scrimmage. We talk about the speed that some of these guys can create and the separation that they have when they're in and out of their breaks, whether it's an in route, an out route, a post, whatever it is. When they stick that foot in the ground and they change direction or change course a little bit, that separation that they can generate that way. An underrated way to separate is your stopping ability. When you are running a comeback or a hitch, and like Tank Dell can do, you put your foot in the ground, your hips completely flip in 1 step, 2 steps to really just gather your balance. That is unbelievably useful, and that itself will create separation, especially when you know you're a vertical threat, because corners are going to be flying by it. They're not going to be able to stop as quickly as you are on a dime. So we use that phrase all the time, like stopping on a dime, has great body control. But truly, the level at which Tank Dell does it on tape and did so at the Senior Bowl makes me believe he's going to be a second-round pick.
Besides Tank Dell, if you had to give an award for if he was your favorite wide receiver at the Senior Bowl, who's your second favorite?
Who did I like at the Senior Bowl? Jaden Reed probably would have been. Oh no! Sorry.
That's KT's guy.
So I love. So wait. I didn't mean to like go back on it too far.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed was awesome.
Yeah.
Jaden Reed was fantastic. He was the first one that popped in my mind.
Yeah.
But my answer has to be Michael Wilson.
From
Stanford.
Hey. All right. So 2 of our guys. So we got 2 of our guys.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Hand up, full transparency. I did not know much about him at all going into the Senior Bowl. Practice number 1, he murders somebody off the line of scrimmage, and I'm like, who is this? And I looked him up, and myself and our lead draft analyst over at PFF, Mike Renner, we immediately after practice went to look into it, and he only played 14 games over the last 3 years due to injury. It was just a terrible run of luck that he had with injury. But even if you go back to last year, he missed the second half of the season, but when he was on the field, he was Stanford's leading receiver. Like he was this good. And the way that he sets up corners in his releases, the way that he knows how to kind of like bend or lean his routes while he's getting vertical to give him an advantage over a corner, either to get them to flip their hips the wrong way or box them out for where he's eventually going to turn and cut. Like, just he understood how to win at the position. at truly a pro level before becoming a pro. So I think that he has to stand out for me. I think that he can also be a second rounder in this class because of what he was able to do down in Mobile. But
smooth too, like it almost looks effortless with him. Like all of his transitions, they don't look like he's exerting too much effort.
It's because he knows what he's going to do next. Right? Like we talk about that with pass rushers all the time. You need to have a plan. It's not that, the ball is hiked, I'm going to start running at the offensive tackle, and then I'm going to figure it out. Some guys are talented enough to do that, but most of the greats know what they're going to do before the ball is snapped. So Michael Wilson was one of those players who took that mentality to wide receiver, especially what we saw in Mobile, where the reason why it looks effortless is because he's not guessing. He doesn't have to react. He knows what he is going to do, and he just did it very, very well. There was one rep, day one, I remember noting this. He was going up against his former teammate, Caillou Blue Kelly, at corner, and he just cooked him off the line. And I was like, dude, I know you're trying to stand out, but you didn't have to do your guy like that. Like you didn't have to put that out on tape, like it was a phenomenal.
Caillou got his though. So, he got his.
Yeah. He did. He bounced back, and that was good to see. But I got to go with Michael Wilson as my guy.
Hell yeah, Nino. I know we got a deep dive here. Why don't you go ahead and bring him up?
Well, it was good because of the way he was describing Michael Wilson and how we know how he leans and get around. My deep guy, I talked to Coach about him a little bit earlier today, is he got invited to Senior Bowl. He didn't go. I think it was his agent kind of talking into him because he had that 1 year where he just blew up. And that would be Charlie Sizzle Jones out of Purdue. I feel like he's super similar to Wilson in the way he runs. Like his footwork isn't the greatest, but the way he controls his body in and out of routes, and he's very physical, and he can high point the ball with the best.
Can we just clarify though? Now, Sizzle is a nickname you've given him, correct?
Shane Hallam gave him that, and I'm riding with that.
All right, so just for full clarity here, he threw it in there as if it was a stamped already, but we've put the stamp on. It's official. That's the nickname. So go ahead.
Look, I have to think that the nickname Sizzle came from the place that I'm going to really talk about him well, and that is, I think Charlie Jones might be the best route runner in this class. Like he just, again, unreal worker. You look at his background. He was a walk-on, or maybe he got a scholarship at Buffalo. I think he got a scholarship at Buffalo.
Yes.
He wanted to play in the Big Ten, didn't get a Big Ten offer, ends up going to Buffalo, plays special teams 1 year, gets a wide receiver shot the next year, doesn't really have the production that he wanted, just wasn't emphasized in the offense, gets an opportunity to walk on at Iowa, which is where he wanted to go, leaves Buffalo, no scholarship, walks on at Iowa. Same thing, makes the team as a special teams guy, works his ass off in special teams. Next year, he gets involved with the wide receiver room, but again, not really emphasized at all. Ends up getting a fifth year because everybody got a fifth year with COVID. Goes to Purdue with Aiden O'Connell in that offense and just goes off. Like the numbers between what he had at Buffalo and Iowa and then what he had at Purdue.
106. Catches.
They're not even in the same galaxy. It's so funny. But I had the chance to do a feature earlier this season on Charlie, so I got to sit down and interview him. And just a super humble, super motivated kid. Like I'm going to be honest. I'm
Charlie's
not saying
a great name too.
Charlie Jones is a great wide receiver name.
It's a great
especially,
name.
especially for especially for a small slot guy in the NFL, which he's going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying this to like throw him under the bus. I'm actually saying this because who he is and how he plays, I'm impressed with it. He was 20 minutes late to our interview because he was getting extra reps with Aiden on a Tuesday. Like on a random Tuesday. He was 20 minutes late to our interview. And the first thing he did was apologize. He's like, "I'm so sorry, man. Like I was getting some extra work in with the quarterbacks, and then we kind of our conversation with there. Obviously, it was totally fine, but that just goes to show, like, not that he's the only guy in the world who's ever stayed late after practice, but that is the kind of player that he is, and that's why he had the production that he did. So clean off the line of scrimmage with his releases, so quick when it comes to the quick game stuff, either the meshes, the slants, the wide receiver screens, all of that, and then he'll get some sneaky speed on you. Like he will. You think that he's just going to be this underneath guy, but he wasn't. Like he was a player who was able to attack vertically and keep cornerbacks honest, right? Because that's all you really want. If you get a guy who does a lot of things underneath, you don't want corners to feel like they can cheat and just come up on you, because he would do that too. He would hit like like sluggo routes where it's like boom, all right, it's a slant, no, and now I'm going vertical, and now you're screwed. Now I'm behind you, and I just think that his body control, his approach to the game, how he has watched a lot of really great route runners at the NFL, which you could tell. I think he's the best route runner in this class. I really do.
Man, sizzle, earning that name. And now me trying to imagine. So I don't know, Trevor, if you know Shane Hallam, but me trying to imagine Shane coming up with a nickname like that, I didn't know that was in him. So that's funny to think of. By the way, we're name dropping. We're name dropping over here. Mark Schofield just DM'd me to say what's up, Trevor. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
Mark, truly one of my favorite people in the business. Mark is one of my dear friends and somebody who helped me when I was getting my start, just like he has helped so many people. So shout out to Mark Schofield, just one of the best out there.
He's coming on in a few weeks, and I don't know if KT and Nino are prepared for this, but last time we had him on, me and him talked about Skyrim for about 20 minutes before we even got.
Oh boy!
And this is live on air. I like. So guys, you don't know what you're in for.
Oh,
I'll try to reel it in. But KT, you got any wide receivers you want to throw in before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I'm going to go into a weird place here. Keyshawn Boutte.
Let's get weird.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
What type of intel do you have? Like how are teams evaluating him? We all know about a situation that we're not supposed to know about, but we know about. We're not saying anything about, but we know that situation exists.
I can't comment on the situation. But
what situation?
Don't worry about the situation.
Exactly.
This is gonna be. I'm glad that you brought him up because he's gonna be incredibly fascinating where he goes in this class, and I'll tell you. I don't really have a good beat on where NFL teams view him right now. I have to think that he didn't declare for the draft initially because he probably didn't like the response that he got back from the NFL Draft Advisory Board. That probably didn't get better given why he is now in the class or the events that transpired that may be the reason why he is now in the class. I think we're going to learn a lot more at the Combine because at the Combine, that's when I get to really hear a lot about what teams think of a lot of players. You're out with different scouts and you're walking around Indianapolis with all these guys and you're just having conversations. You just be like, yeah, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of this guy? And you kind of piece things together and you learn a lot. But Keyshawn's interesting. He was a lot of people's wide receiver 1 going into this year. I didn't have him as high because I didn't think that he was as complete of a wide receiver. I felt like he was more of just an athlete than a true artist at the position at that point in time. But I know a lot of people really like that, and they like the upside and the athleticism. So, man, he's a fascinating case. I'm not exactly sure what the NFL thinks about him right now or what his round value would be because, yeah, this is somebody that was getting mocked in top 15, top 20 in those way too early mock drafts, 8-9 months ago, whatever it was. And now we're talking about him as like, okay, is he going to be a day 3 pick? Does he get drafted? Like, I truly don't know at this point. So
it just, this screams Jerry Jones value pick. Like,
they need a wide receiver too. So like that would not shock me.
Look at what they do. Look at Sam Williams. Sam Williams, a lot of people were, and this is on the defensive side of the football, a lot of people were very high on, and then he had some issues between him and the coaching staff. Dan Quinn fell in love with him, and then what? They took him in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Mm-hmm. And Keyshawn Boutte, like
same with Collins, and it's weird. It was the same school, but just weird.
I mean, it just screams Jerry Jones. Like I could see this cat with a star on the side of his helmet. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I just
clip that. We might have to clip
we're going to have to
Coach
clip
might
that.
Have got a crystal ball prediction there.
Yeah, it's Shep Stradamus when I make my prediction.
Coach, if I don't ask about this last wide receiver, my phone will probably blow up from Jared.
Oh, here we go.
Bro,
your phone's already blown up.
My guy.
It's already blown up. Applauded for you blasting me about AR-15. So go ahead and bring them up.
It would be Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. He's the yak machine. He averaging like 19 yards per catch. What are your thoughts on Mims in this year's draft?
I'm going to be honest. I have not watched enough of Mims yet. Like, he's somebody that I have to get on my list for final evals. I'm going to try to get through, like 20 25 of these guys by the time we get around to April, and he is one of those players that I didn't watch yet on my early rankings. So I've only seen the stats. I've only seen obviously the crazy Oklahoma offense that he comes from. But I'm sorry. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I just have not watched enough of him yet.
All right. I feel like we need to just throw in an Oklahoma. I feel like we just need to talk about Eric Gray. Just let's.
Right.
Oh my guy! My guy!
If we're gonna throw Jared a bone, let's step to running backs real quick.
There
What
we
are your
go.
thoughts on Eric Gray?
Man, I will tell you, I had Eric Gray as my RB2 going into not this past season, the season before. So when we initially transferred to Oklahoma, I watched his Tennessee tape and I was like, this dude's got juice. Like, he is awesome. And I still think he does, but he just, I don't know, man. He just was not able to make as many plays as I thought he was going to. And, making plays as a running back is more than just you, but I still like the skill set. Like, I'm still a sucker for the skill set. I think he's got a great body type, man. I think that he's just an athletic player. And so, I'm not as high on him in this running back class as I was a couple of years ago, but he's still a guy that, like, when he gets drafted, wherever he gets drafted, it's probably going to be just a day 3 guy at this point. I'm going to be like, good pick. I like it. Whatever team picks him, I'm just going to be like, good pick. Nice.
Yeah. Man, I feel like we could totally open up a can of worms right now by going down a running back lane, but this is not what we're here for. You came for the wide receivers if you're listening, but you stay for the Eric Gray take. But Trevor, man, it has been absolutely incredible. It's always fun talking with you, man, and we appreciate you. Nino and KT, you guys got anything to say before we wrap this up?
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. One last thing. I think my favorite wide receiver in this class is actually Parker Washington from Penn State, and I didn't get to talk about him.
Talk about him. Just you can't do that.
Drop the dime. You can't drop a dime like that. And
He has to.
He's okay. Let me make sure I have the measurements right because I don't want to mess it up here. But like, he's another slot wide receiver, but I just like he's my type of dude. 5'10", 215. Okay, so like this is not just your. Oh shoot! Did you guys lose me? Did I lose you?
Oh,
No.
Oh shoot! Okay, sorry. Sorry, I didn't realize.
I
I didn't realize what was happening. I didn't realize I had my eyes on the screen. No, so 5'10". I got the full screen for Parker Washington.
Yeah.
5'10", 215. He's a slot wide receiver, but he's got a lot of power to him. Like he brings a lot of that to his game. He's got yards after catch ability. For being only 5'10", he loves to make catches above the rim. He had one of the highest contested catch percentage that we graded at PFF. I think it was like. Man, I think it was like 70-80% or something like that of contested catches. It might have been even low 90s by the time the season was over, but had a really high quarterback rating whenever he was targeted. It just wasn't an offense that was really potent in the passing game. Penn State just wasn't known for that, but he is somebody who I absolutely think can be a better pro than even what he was able to put out there in college. I love the athleticism. I love how big he plays for this position that he does, and I think he can be an all-around true slot. So he is, man. For where you're going to draft Parker Washington in this draft, he might be my favorite guy. So
Man.
I had to say that before we got out of here.
All right,
That's
I'm
a good
glad
take.
we wrapped it up going back to wide receiver. Like we dabbled in running back real quick and went right back to wide receiver. So I love it. So Trevor, what are you working on? Like what can the listeners and the viewers and the readers, what can they expect to be coming from you over the next few weeks?
Yeah, after your wonderful listeners listen to this podcast every time it comes out, if you guys then want to listen to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast with myself and Connor Rogers, we are breaking down basically everything as we get you guys ready for the draft. We got positional rankings coming out. We're previewing the combine. We're going to update the team needs as free agency comes around. Of course, we're going to give you guys what you want with the prospect rankings, the big board updates, and the words that everybody loves to hear, the constant mock drafts between now and the end of April. Yeah. So that is kind of where I would just point to everybody to, because we're having a blast covering the draft there.
Excellent. Well, again, we really appreciate it. You want to check him out on the Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey. And again, it's the NFL Stock Exchange podcast over at PFF. Man, episode number 4 is in the books. We appreciate you. We hope you've enjoyed it. We got a lot more coming up down the road. Mark Schofield, who we name drop, he's going to be coming on after the combine to be talking some quarterbacks. We got Kyle Bellafuel coming on to be talking defensive players coming out of the draft. We got a lot of names. So make sure you're subscribed Check out our Twitter handle at Toilets Titles. Check out at the CFB Nation. We'll keep you tuned in for all the stuff we got coming on, because we got so much stuff coming on. I can't even think of it all, man. We've been like, all of a sudden, within like the last 2 months, it's like we've hit hyperdrive. You think the season ends and it slows down. I don't know what happened. It's like Mario Kart when you're racing and all of a sudden you see those arrows and you go over those arrows and you speed up. That happened, man. So I'm still trying to catch up.
Coach,
it's all gravy. Go ahead.
Don't tell them they got to get gilded.
Oh, man, we got a gilded chat, man. So if you want to get in there, you want to be talking to us, check it out. So DM me on the Twitter at Coach Sheps. It's free. We just talk nonsense in there. And then also we got a Frankensteak list in the league with Trevor. If you play fantasy, man, I might have to poke your brain, see if you're interested. It's crazy. It is absolutely bananas. There's like 100 teams in there. We got playable cards. Like, dude, it's an investment. Like you're putting a lot of time in there, but it's unlike anything you've ever played before. I can promise you that. So if you're listening at home, you want to get in that, at Coach Sheps on the Twitter, and I'll get you involved. So that's it. We'll catch you all later on. Take care.